her personal space, Mr. Speaker, had to screen everyone who was suspect to having COVID-19 or the virus. And until she did not give the permission for a test, the Guyanese nation was held at bay. Mr. Speaker, now, Mr. Speaker, now, because the PPP civic government was able to negotiate funding, was able to negotiate donations of testing kits and materials to help to stem the transition, we are still being accused of not having done anything. I agree that it appears as though that the rates are rising. But as my colleagues before have already said, is that the rates are increasing. It's because we have been doing the testing. I am told that there are approximately 200 and more tests being done daily now. How much did the APNU AFC done when COVID was discovered? In fact, they didn't even have enough testing kits to test themselves, that they arrived all over the place trying to justify that it was not an issue. But it was an issue, because now we are discovering the extent of the infection in this nation. And we have a responsibility as a government, as a PPP civic government, not only to contain transmission, but we have the responsibility to support and provide relief to all the families and villages that are affected. And we have begun to do that. Mr. Speaker, there were calls prior to the PPP Civic taking office in August for support, but none was forthcoming. In fact, there were 1,000, I think 1,000 or a little bit more than 1,000 hampers that were provided to families, affected families. And that was one of the biggest criticism. Mr. Speaker, even when we, the PPP Civic, was not sitting in the seat or in the driving seat, as my honorable member said, we were out there in the fields addressing the families that were suffering. Mr. Speaker, we began the Mask Up campaign when a government who's claiming to be very astute, efficient, comrade, Mr. Speaker, they could not even provide masks to the city. They haven't done it. But now they expect it to be done in record time. Well, I will tell you that while we were in opposition, we were masking this nation up. Now that we're in government, we will further provide further mask and ensure that we care for our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that our budget is replete with our commitments to the people. The commitments that we have made is very present. It is evidence in the budget. And therefore, this is a different approach than the APNU approach. Because if I can recall that in their first 100 days in office, they did not even accomplish those commitments or promises made. And in the 5th year, they still were not accomplishing what they said they will do. And in fact, they criticized the manifesto that we have. But I want to remind them that they did not take a manifesto to the people during the elections. Their manifesto remains a blank document. So, Mr. Speaker, I will not compare the PPP Civic, or neither would I wish to take the guidance, or wish that our leaders take the guidance that we should copy or follow what APNU AFC has done. Because I can tell you that all the projects that they are claiming credit for were projects initiated by the PPP Civic government, including securing and committing funds to those projects. And I can tell them now that many of the projects that they took over that were in progress, it took them 5 years to even reach a 50 to 70% completion. And I can reel it out on my hands. The East Coast Road, the PPP project that took them 5 years and still have not completed it. The airport, PPP project, money is committed, they have not rolled it out. West Dam Road, the PPP project, committed, money is committed. And therefore, there are still complaints on the road. Mr. Speaker, the failure to complete ongoing projects where there was no need for looking or sourcing financing for those projects, which would have taken away some of the time and give you an excuse, but there's no excuse for not completing those projects. Mr. Speaker, looking at the indigenous development, Mr. Speaker, I want to posit here today that the Amerindian Act of 2006 does not limit Amerindians, indigenous, to say what they want to call themselves by. You can call yourself Amerindians, you can call yourself indigenous, you can call yourself First People, you can call yourself Aboriginals, you can even call yourself by the nation that you come from. And that you must know, because it seems as though you are fighting over terminology instead of representing the people and fighting to eradicate the challenges faced by Amerindians, or as you would want to say, indigenous. I have no problem with that. It is used interchangeably. So don't make a petty matter a national matter. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to respond to this matter of youth development, ACE, CSOs, because it has become very convoluted to the members on the other side, the honorable members on the other side. Mr. Speaker, I've heard all manner of criticism about the project, the CSOs, that there were political young people running around with red shirts. In the past, I've heard that it was a red brigade. In the past, I heard that it was the honorable minister who selected these youths. I've heard that these youths were providing service that were not comparable to others. Mr. Speaker, I want to sort this matter out once and for all. I would like to say that I've seen former ministers waving a piece of paper and saying that it was the PPP Civic that dismissed the CSO. I also heard the Honorable Member of Parliament from Region 9 said that it was the PPP Civic who cancelled the check. But, Mr. Speaker, if you can't understand You can't read, you don't do your research, you'll be hooked by the nose and pulled down into the mud. And I want to say this to this National Assembly today, to this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, when we left office in 2015, it was in March. It was in March. Yes, it was in March. In fact, the PS and myself received a message that we should not turn up to the office because they have set upon us security forces with guns. That was the message we received, that we were not to enter. Well, I know that when you're no longer in government, you can't go into your office, but you can go to the ministry to make representation on behalf of the constituency which you represent. But the message was clear. Mr. Speaker, when we left office, there was a cabinet decision that was passed on March the 18th, which clearly outlined that January to April, salaries for the CSO was approved. The process, Mr. Speaker, was that every quarter payments were prepared and made. Then the new government took over. Mr. Speaker, the new government under a new minister had no sympathy for the Amerindian youths. Imagine, they took no concern over the CSOs. They allowed them to work from March to June and refused to pay them. June, I have the records now, and I can waive the records because I have the cabinet document and I have the internal memo from the officers who wrote in May, 27th of May, asking the Honorable Minister to pay the CSOs, including attaching this cabinet memo or cabinet decision, which was approved for them to be paid. I want to tell this House today that in May, the PPP Civic was not sitting in the seat of power. They were in power. Mr. Speaker, in May, they were in power. So they should have paid it. And I can see the signature of two officers, one sitting in here and one who was dismissed, who was sent home because he happened not to be to the liking of the new government. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like for once and for all to say, we were not sitting there. Mr. Speaker, they never prepared the check. They never prepared the check. And the blame for that non-preparation of the check was should squarely be placed on the APNU AFC. In fact, they did not only due them for April, but they allowed those young people to work until June and disconnected them without 3 months of payment.
Where's the prodigal check? You pay back the money.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say to this National House that Budget 2020 is going to provide for the reinstatement of the CSOs. And in the initial phase of this program, in the remaining quarter of the year, we will ensure that a minimum of 40 communities get on board in this very initial stage. Realistically, this is what can be accomplished. And therefore, The budget provides in excess of $68.4 million to allow this to happen. This means that $68.4 million will be circulating in the pockets and in the village that so badly needs an injection of cash. Mr. Speaker, school uniform assistance. This is something, if a government can take away support from students, it's a government that has proven that they are anti-students or they are against supporting students. Mr. Speaker, every year for the last 5 years, the APNU AFC government received a budget of $89.4 million for school uniform. And this should be investigated because I have asked the office to provide me with the numbers so that I will be able to represent clearly how the APNU AFC cheated the children of the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, $89.4 million was budgeted. Do you know how much that the APNU government was able to expend? $39 million. Imagine, you can't even procure, you can't even get an early award, and you can't even distribute uniform in the year that you are provided with a provision to do so. Is that efficiency? Is that doing the right thing? I said no, it's total failure. Total failure to just buy and procure uniform following the correct process, and you still can't get it done within the year. In 2018, Mr. Speaker, they got the same amount, and guess how much they were able to expend? They only used $14.92 million. Not spend out everything. You wouldn't like me to expose you. Mr. Speaker, $14.9 million was spent. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, they received the same amount. Do you know how much they spent? $3.789 million. A government, a ministry with 2 ministers who claim to love Amerindians, who claim to want to support their development, who claim to want to ensure that they benefit from the natural resource and the financial resource and everything from this country, and there you're sitting on your chairs and not even worrying whether the children were being provided with school uniforms. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Minister, you have spent all of your time. You will need an extension to continue and conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask that my honorable colleague is able to be given 5 minutes more to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr.
Honorable
Speaker.
Minister, you may continue.
Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot about ICT, but I want to say that the budget provides for us to reinstate the correct concept to this program. And we want to ensure and assure this House that the PPP civic government is going to bring the real program to this country and to the indigenous people or the Amerindian people of this land. Mr. Speaker, currently we're in a pandemic. Many of the lofty facts or lofty untruths that we've heard in this House about the ICT, it's not working. My colleague has a lot of issues with trying to get teaching material to the hinterland through the internet by the use of the Wi-Fi that you put in. It's not working. In fact, some villages can't even use it because they don't have the computers, they don't have smartphones, and only when visitors pass by with those type of equipment is it used. So I don't know what you were thinking when you reinvented a different concept than what was supposed to be. In the budget, Mr. Speaker, we will be providing additional support to ensure that the hubs that were supposed to facilitate the equipment, the computers, etc., will be furnished and refurbished because many of them have been abandoned and used for different purposes. So we have to prepare for them. Mr. Speaker, farmers, indigenous and Amerindian farmers, Mr. Speaker, have had the worst treatment in a long, long time. Mr. Speaker, the government, APNU, AFC, has stopped providing for agricultural support to farmers in the hinterland. In fact, there's no more free FASTAC, no more free Akushi Ansbait, no more tools, and therefore the budget intends to ensure that there's full support for the farmers in the hinterland so that they will be able, in the long term, to stem any disaster as it relates to food security. They'll be able, in the long term, to ensure that their food security is guaranteed. Mr. Speaker, with respect to presidential grants, in this budget, we provide 280 million, and this is an increase. The APNU AFC government took 5 years, sat there 5 years, and never one day thought that they should increase the grant fund for the villages. So in this budget, we intend to provide an increase so that further circulation of investment fund is injected into the village economy. Mr. Speaker, land titling. Quickly, I've heard a lot about land titling, but I want to report to this House that that was a disaster under the last government. A disaster so much so that the former minister reported when he was pressured into answering to why there was a pause or why there was nothing happening, he admitted that within the 5 years that he had spent, he was unable to even title one land or one piece of land to the Amerindians. A shame. The haze. Mr. Speaker, they always seem to want to justify haze being a success. But when I got into that office, what happened? I asked for an update to haze. I was told that the first cohort for haze had 70% failure. The second cohort, which is the second phase, but they're calling it cohort, Mr. Speaker, they said they only realized a little over 50% success. So I rest my case as it relates with haze. Mr. Speaker, they have been unable to support the youths as it relates to training. Mr. Speaker, in terms of my responses, I said that I would keep some of the responses for the last in case I run out of time. But I want to say that with the housing project, that is the low-income housing project, which they've asked us to continue. And the way it was presented as though it's an APNU AFC initiative. That housing project, Mr. Speaker, began under the PPP civic government. And we intend to continue it when new and fresh negotiations will take place. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the land management courses, again, it's not a novel initiative. Land management was done in collaboration with the University of the West Indies. You know, when you go into office and you want to disregard the successes of someone or an institution or a government, you turn your back or your eyes away from what had been occurring previously. So that is exactly what has just been said in this House, that this novel idea of land management all started on the APNU. It didn't. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the Green State, Mr. Speaker, has never been a document
Honourable Member,
that has been
I'm afraid
formalized.
you have to wind down.
In fact, there is nothing such as a green state. What we have seen over the past 5 years is the greening of buildings. Everywhere you go, they have used up the green state money to green the buildings. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. And I ask that this budget be provided with the full support of this House.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you very much. Honourable members, I was supposed to have made a little statement before the previous speaker. I did hear quite a bit of comments coming when the Honourable Member, Ms. Hastings, was speaking, and a lot of the language and the comments could be classified as unparliamentary. So once again, I make the plea to all of us, all of you, to keep it at a high level and ensure we respect each other. The Honourable Member, Mr. Ronald Cox.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to express congratulations to you on being elected the 12th Speaker of this Honourable House. I thank you, and I hope that you will be fair and impartial in all your rulings. I have every belief that it can only be done in all fairness. Honourable members, I'm honoured and consider it a great opportunity to be elected a freshman member of this Parliament of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. I also want to congratulate my colleagues on this side of the House who have taken up this bold step. I also wish to express best wishes to Ms. Sarah Brown, who is my sister-in-law. In this House, Ms. Brown, we represent the interests of Guyanese people, more especially the people of the Borima-Waini region. So at home, we are family. Here, we must fight. And fight we will do. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, again, before I commence my presentation on Budget 2020, on behalf of the grouping of APNUFC Coalition, Borima-Waini region, I wish to thank all our hard-working public servants, including the ordinary men and women who work tremendously despite the many challenges posed by the PUP-controlled Regional Democratic Council of the Borima-Waini region. Despite the unsupportive and callous behavior of the regional officials, the Borima-Waini region has witnessed major transformational development under the previous administration. I wish to, but cannot say that this budget represents a continuation of such great hinterland development. Mr. Speaker, my honourable members of the other side, the government side, are always quick to comment that indigenous peoples' development became a reality under the PPC government and that they love poor people. Well, I believe that after being there for 23 long years, you had no other choice but to start the development. But the question is, was the development enough in 23 years? Mr. Speaker, the development in Amerindian communities over the last 5 years could be equivalent to that 23 years in their government. It is paramount and an indication of greater focus on hinterland development by the APNU-AFC administration. Moreover, the decentralization of many social services is a testimony of a better life for all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, for example, the establishment of a regional office for the Guyana Revenue Authority in Maburuma, Central Commanding Center for the Guyana Police Force, the construction of a first ever fire station, an environmentally friendly park, a spanking new concrete bridge in Maruka, an upgraded airstrip, and the completion of the district hospital at Port Kaituma, and the completion of the road from Wongna to Yarakito are just a few highlights of the AP and UFC administration. Education delivery. Mr. Speaker, although stated in Guyana's government education policy is to provide indigenous children with the same educational opportunities offered to students all across Guyana, especially the coastland, as the rest of the population, this access, I must say, is not equitably distributed. I wish to remind the Honorable Minister of Education that education cannot be equally distributed. It must be equitably distributed, because you are putting us in the hinterland communities at a disadvantage. So in your policy decision making, ensure that you consider that. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Ambranian communities, government initiatives, again, to provide hot meals, uniforms, free transportation to school for rural students, exists only in theory until the AP and UFC administration took office in 2015. And they made it a reality. It has been indicated that oftentimes the infrastructure to fulfill these initiatives and disperse the aid, as well as information about the opportunities available, does not even reach many hinterland communities. I wish to beg that the Honorable Minister of Education, we demand an equitable, again, I repeat, we demand an equitable distribution of education across Guyana. A few questions must be considered when implementing projects. What are the implementation details of your project? Are there any mechanisms to ensure that students benefit from such project? And I want to touch a little bit on the $15,000 cash grant proposed. Mr. Speaker, when the $10,000 cash grant was distributed just before the elections in 2015, I think it was, it can only be considered as a political stratagem. It is, and it was, a political contrivance just to gain attraction. An attraction they did, but it did not serve them well in 2015. Again, Mr. Speaker, when that money was distributed, you wonder if it was heritage time, because the parents, after collecting the money, were drunk in Komaka at a market center, and I believe that not one book or pen or pencil was purchased with that money for the students. That is my question. What are your mechanisms to ensure that the student benefit? I'm not saying it is a bad project. I am saying rethink your mechanism. Mr. Speaker, when I was sitting at General Council of the Guyana Teachers Union, the then minister, now again returning Minister of Education, would attend our meetings. And when we ask, when we deliberate for increase in teachers' salaries, our comments, and I quote, "If you don't like the job, leave the job." Mr. Speaker, that is very disrespectful to the educated people of this nation, who deserves every bit of increase in their salaries. Suppose we have taken your advice and walk out of the teaching profession. Who will you put there to teach the nation's children? Mr. Speaker, the PPC has made exorbitant and luxurious promises to our indigenous brothers and sisters. I want to remind my fellow indigenous brothers and sisters that we must hold the government responsible and demand what was promised to us. Where is the $50,000 cash grant that you promised? The budget is just, again I repeat, a stratagem which is designed to attract attention. Mr. Speaker, another example is Santa Rosa Secondary School in Maruka has students who travel for miles to get to school. For example, Paraburi, 6 miles. Wallaba, 10 miles. Kamwata, 7 miles. These students spend $2,500 per week to get to school. Moreover, from my interaction with teachers, more than 50% of these students do not have lunch on a daily basis. Therefore, the establishment of a feeding program or an expansion of the allocation for the dormitory kitchen to cater for these students would have been by far a greater initiative of this government other than a $15,000 one-time cash granting. Mr. Speaker, I call on the government of Guyana to implement strategies that will ensure children stay in schools. Over the last 5 years, Guyana has risen to its rightful place as the best performing country in CSEC. And for that, Mr. Speaker, I must congratulate my honorable member, Nicolette Henry. Mr. Speaker, health services. Mr. Speaker, most indigenous communities rely on quick and shallow home dug ponds for their water supply. Communities close to mining areas, largely bauxite and gold, are in danger of their water being contaminated, and many don't have access to safe, potable water. There are many many cases of respiratory infections, waterborne diseases, skin rashes in all hinterland areas. Arguably due to resource extraction industry activity, I call on the relevant, responsible ministers to think of the strategies to better the life of indigenous brothers and sisters, rather than focusing only on the rich who goes there to exploit our lands. Mr. Speaker, I call on the government to continue to upgrade what the AP and UFC government has left in Region 1, more especially Mabruma. Upgrade the Mabruma Regional Hospital so that you will decrease the high rate of emergency medevac to Georgetown. This upgradement is initiated by the AP and UFC government must continue, and any caring government who have all the rights, who have all desires for a good life for all, will continue any good project. And so, you must continue. Additionally, the people of Imbatero, that is where I'm from, the only community closest to the Venezuelan border. And I'm sure, if you ask, where is Imbatero located? Are you aware? Do you know where it is? Because hardly has anybody visited that community. For too long, they have been asking for a health center. They have to travel 20 miles by canoe boat paddling to Mabruma to get to a hospital. Mr. Speaker, I call on the Minister of Health to ensure that these people's wishes become a reality. Mr. Speaker, agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I also want to tell the people in the government, the honorable members of the government, I heard the comments, yes. You must understand that Region 1 had 28% increase in vote for the coalition government, the greatest increase in all the regions. So that speaks for itself. And if you don't look carefully for the people of Region 1 and Region 9, which had 26% increase, you will be losing those two hinterland regions. You may not lose it now, but in time to come, you will. Mr. Speaker, the APNUFC has given titles to indigenous people for lands totaling 3,000 square miles or 3.5% of Guyana's total land space. While the PP in 23 years, under 5 presidents, gave 2,800 square miles, which is equivalent to 3.4 of Guyana's land. Mr. Speaker, what is the comparison? Between 2016 and 2019, the APNUFC has issued also in grants to indigenous communities across Guyana the sum of $935 million, while the PPNH in their stay in 23 years was just above that. Mr. Speaker, this budget
Honorable member, before you talk about more grants, the Assembly has to give you a grant of time to continue and conclude.
Comrade Speaker, I do ask that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, you may continue to the conclusion in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Public Works. The information and communication technology has always been an integral part of the APNUFC vast initiative for development in hinterland communities. Every government buildings and offices was equipped with Wi-Fi connecting the once lost world under the PPC. It was only 3 weeks ago when the RDC was able to virtually present the budget proposal to the Director of Budget. I want to remind the RDC of Borima Wine region that such initiative must be applauded and continued. It is sad that Budget 2020 lacked technological vision, especially in hinterland communities such as those in the Borima Wine region. Sadly, it is in a time when a pandemic has forced the world to go virtual. Mr. Speaker, Wi-Fi must and should be installed at all schools across Region 1. Mr. Speaker, for decades, the people of Morocco begged the PP government for a new bridge. It was only realized a few years ago. Mr. Speaker, the previous administration has lifted the bar for hinterland development, and now it is a competition for this new PVP government. The PVP, well known for the substandard work done across hinterland regions because of the lack of supervision over such projects, which they had to return from time to time. For example, in Mabaruma, the dark roads. I want to pause a little bit to give an example. The then minister, the Honorable Mr. Ben, he's not here today. On one of his visits to Mabruma, was examining the road. Mr. Speaker, this is the road. It is slush, real slush. I was there, and the Honorable Minister, while walking, fell. I hope that he remembers that clearly. Mr. Speaker, under the APNUFC government, this is the photo. This is the photo. This is Kamaka. Mr. Speaker, this one is Port Kaituma Road. Students are traveling to the Port Kaituma Secondary School. Mr. Speaker, this is Port Kaituma Road. This is Port Kaituma Road now. Mr. Speaker, this is the smoothest road Region 1 had, the Barabina Road. It is the smoothest because it is water. Mr. Speaker, this is now the Barabina Road. Mr. Speaker, if I have to show enough evidence, it will not permit me enough time. Mr. Speaker, I'd like in closing to say that I want to call on my friend, the Honorable Pauline Sukai, now Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. Please, Minister, urgently implement a national consultation on this issue of Amerindian versus Indigenous. It must not be your only one-man decision. Let the people speak. This is a democratic society. And this national consultation will determine the solution to this issue. Mr. Speaker, I wish to close by saying, when bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. So, Mr. Speaker, we have to stand firm and associate ourselves against anyone that does not have the interest at heart of indigenous people's development. Mr. Speaker, I want to call on again my good friend, Mr. Colin Cole, during one of his visits recently. Only last month, the people of Korea could call last night to say 3 weeks later, they are still without water. As you promised, the next Thursday they will have it fixed. I just want to ensure that I pass this message on to you. And so they said, the PUP always said they are committed. But if you take 3 weeks to be committed for a 2-day project, then that's not nice. And I so will advise you, stick to your commitment the next time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, there are certain words that are unparliamentary. And we are hearing words like shut up being expressed or shouted out in the dome. Please, again, let us keep our behavior in the dome very exemplary. The Honorable Member, Ms. Yvonne Pearson.
Mr. Speaker, before you move on to the Honorable Member, I know I'm allowed to clarify and make corrections from the floor out of respect.
Honorable Minister,
Out of respect Mr. Speaker, out of respect for the member's maiden speech, I did not rise while he was speaking. It is my entitlement, and I'm asking kindly that I be allowed to make a correction from the floor.
Honorable Member, on a point of order, it has to be something particular to what he said or
it is very particular to what he said.
Not a point of correction or elucidation. You can pass that.
It's a point of elucidation, Mr. Speaker.
And we don't take that as a point of order where we have to give.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not making a point of order. I'm asking for a point of elucidation that I did not want to make while he was speaking.
An honorable member, I'm saying that I'm not allowing it. Honorable member, Ms. Yvonne Pearson. Honorable Member, Ms. Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to make my contribution to Budget 2020, first of all, I wish to say thanks to God Almighty, the Great Spirit, for giving me this opportunity, health, and strength to be here in this honorable house. I also wish to say thanks to the Guyanese people who put their support with the People's Progressive Party Civic to ensure that we are in government once more, so that we can bring our plan for prosperity, real prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I wish to take this opportunity also to say congratulations to you on your ascension of office as the Speaker of the House. May God give you the courage, health, strength, patience, Mr. Speaker, to execute your duty in a very good way. I also wish to say congratulations to the Honorable Lennox Odell Schumann, who has the courage to accept the position of Deputy Speaker. Congratulations, my son. In our indigenous language, I say, Wachinachi Salaro Bele Kono Lukuchi, meaning God bless you and preserve you and keep you, my Arawak son. May God keep you and give you the courage to stand up as a great chief, as our ancestors walked before us. Mr. Speaker, history has been created in this house on September 1st. Amerindians throughout the length and breadth of Guyana feel proud and happy when they learn that Mr. Schumann, the honorable member, is now the Deputy Speaker. It is for the first time in the history of our country that an Amerindian son will stand in this house proudly as Deputy Speaker. However, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, comrades, honorable member on the other side of the house did not see it fit. Words like "it is an abomination" came from an honorable member across the house publicly on social media, which is an insult to the Amerindian peoples of this country. And yet, honorable members are standing up here now and pretend that they love us so much, when it is an abomination for an Amerindian person to be the Deputy Speaker of this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, I must say, we cannot change history, and we will continue to make changes. And this change happened under the People's Progressive Party Civic, because we supported him so that he can be our Deputy Speaker. History. 10th of September 1957. That's why we are celebrating Amerindian Heritage Month. The late Stephen Campbell took the oath of office. Today, we are all proud of him. We are still proud of his legacy. And talking about legacy, yes, he left legacy that we are all proud of. Mr. Speaker, that being said, we talk about unity and love and all these things. But as Amerindians, after March 2nd, we have faced many derogative words, things that thrown us. And so while the honorable member on the other side of the house is calling for unity, I am also saying, yes, we must have unity. And yes, call on your supporters to give us due respect in this house, on the street, and throughout Guyana. We are the first peoples of this country, and therefore it must not be said, break down the bridges, go back to your bush, and all sorts of things that I wouldn't like to say in this house. Honorable Mr. Speaker, let me move on to Budget 2020. Sitting here in the past 2 days, Mr. Speaker, I've heard so many things, so many words describing Budget 2020. Budget 2020 is being brought to this Honorable House, our plans for prosperity. Budget 2020 has been described by the other side of the House as budget to hoodwink the nation, backward budget, and the new word I heard yesterday from the Honorable Member, Sherrod Duncan, project. I want to know, Mr. Speaker, this is the new word. I'm trying to look where I can find the meaning of that word. So, we've heard all sorts of things about this budget. But, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that Budget 2020 is an emergency budget. Budget 2020 should have been in this House before now. If everything went well, and if members on the other side of the House, or let me say, if the APNU AFC had respected the rule of law, we would have been here before. We would have been here before and presented maybe a better budget. I also wish to remind the honorable members on the other side of the House that the APNU plus AFC spent more than half of Budget 2020. And yes, I would like you to hear, because I think some people don't have good hearing. You spent more than half of the budget. And so, now you're calling the budget all sorts of things. But you, unauthorized, illegal, spent the money. And here we are now. We have to perform miracle to meet all the demands that is now being made. Budget, this is Budget 2020. We are in September. We just have a few more months. Honorable members, I would like you to look out for Budget 2021. That would not be an emergency budget. That would not be an emergency budget. And I do hope that budget you will have the opportunity to spend or shortchange us on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, let me go to budget presentation. I would like to say what was said. I would like to say the thanks to the Honorable Juan Edgel, to the team from the Ministry of Finance, the former President Bharat Jagdeo, champion of the earth. And all those who work diligently in the preparation of Budget 2020, an emergency budget, a budget that the APNU, AFC already spent half of the money. I would also like to say our plans for prosperity will move forward under the leadership under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali and retired Brigadier Mark Phillips. We will move forward also with our team sitting on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, I would like to focus more on the section that deals with Amerindians, because that's what we're here for. And I listened to the young member that presented a little before me. And yes, he made some very good points. Yes. But I wish to remind him that things like school feeding program, that was their hot meal, that was there before. And as a government, you meet something, you're supposed to build on it, extend it further. And so, sir, we will not forget about it. We will try to do better. And we will do better. You spoke about education, equitable sharing of education. Let me remind you, sir, me remind this honorable House, and I'm happy that we have a young doctor sitting among us here, Dr. Tandita Smith. And we have many more across this country who benefited from educational program scholarships under the People's Progressive Party Civic. And it will continue, sir. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It will continue and we will do better. We will do better because that is our aim. The People's Progressive Party Civic is a government for everyone. And the Amerindian peoples is a very important part of this population. And that's why I want to say that's why we are sitting on this side of the House. My colleague, we are here. And I appreciate you raising those things. Yes. I would like to say to you, sir, road networks, it didn't start under APNU. It started a long time. Under the People's Progressive Party Civic, it started. All these things. I am not saying that the road was the best under the PP, but it started. And you know many things. I'm talking about pictures. I can bring pictures too. Because I would like to say to the Honorable Patterson, the Lyman Sands Road, go and see it. The Lyman Sands Road that is touted, it's so good, go and see it. I didn't know I was in court, or else I would have brought my evidence. Okay? Yes. So, no, that is not correct, sir. That is not correct, sir. It is not correct. Anyway, let me continue. So, Honorable Member Cox, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We will continue. And this is what we are all about. A government that is caring for not only Amerindians, but for all Guyanese. Now, the budget. Budget 2020. I've heard so many things that is not happening. As I said before, we cannot perform miracle now. No. What has happened? We have heard, Honorable Minister spoke about the CSOs. We all know what happened. We all know who carried the story and how they want it. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to say, the Hayes project that replaced the CSOs, it is or it was a failure. Total failure. Mr. Speaker, October 2019, I sat in this very building in this dome. I sat right there. And I listened to the presentation of the then Minister Valerie Garrido Lowe, who is unfortunately not here. Now, what did she say? She quoted figures, over $4 billion that was spent on the project. She quoted how many persons were trained. And what disturbed me most is how many successful small business were established under that project. Mr. Speaker, the then minister says 2,054 successful small business under the Hayes project. Mr. Speaker, I traveled the length and breadth of Guyana, every region.
Honorable member, for us to travel along with you in the speech, you'd have to get an extension to conclude.
Speaker, I'd like to ask for 5 minutes more for my honorable colleague to be able to conclude her presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable member, you may continue to the conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I'm saying I have not been able to identify 54 successful small business under the Hayes project. Yes, including Region 9, where I asked question. Secondly, sir, Mr. Speaker, shut your mouth. Mr. Speaker, I would like to turn my attention to land, which will be addressed in Budget 2020. Land. Mr. Speaker, when we demit office, the sum of $10.7 million were left there. Mr. Speaker, on the 31st day of May 2018, the then Minister Ali Kopp admitted to the media that he was unable to title even one village. Yet, Mr. Speaker, I've heard in this very house here that we must take a page out of Mr. Ali Kopp's book. But honorable members, I don't think I want a page, or any of us should take a page out of Mr. Ali Kopp's book. First of all, let it be known, honorable member Henry, that Mr. Ali Kopp sat in this parliament and he hadn't a voting rights. So he can say he didn't vote for that. He hadn't a voting right. And he failed. And I want to remind the honorable member for Region 2 who mentioned in the first day, and I also want to bring this to the honorable member Henry attention. He mentioned the manifesto. This is the 2015 APNU AFC manifesto, and they have failed to deliver from their manifesto. Page 32 speaks about indigenous peoples, and under the guidance of Mr. Ali Kopp and Ms. Garrido Lowe, they have failed to deliver, and yet we are hearing we must take a page. Nowhere we do not want, and we will not take a page. But under Budget 2020, yes, land demarcation, land titling is back on it. And we will deliver. We will deliver. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, yes, deliver for mainstay. I must say I'm thankful. The work for mainstay was already done. And the work for many villages is completed. And I would like to say, what stopped or what hindered, or what hold back the hands of the APNU AFC government from delivering. Mr. Speaker, let me say, maths is a problem. September 2019, a publication says 8 villages would receive their title soon. As I read that article and I number the villages, I only come up with 7 villages listed, but the headlines say 8. And I would like to ask now, could any member on the other side of the House tell me how many titles were handed out at the last Two Shows conference? And those titles, we did the work, and to my knowledge, 5. Publish 8, name 7, and hand 5. Mr. Speaker, this is what we're dealing with. Mr. Speaker, we did the work just to hand it out. It took 5 years, and still you cannot deliver all that we left. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that I've heard several times in various presentations from honorable members on that side of the House that this is a private sector budget. May I remind the honorable members, private sector employs people. So if the private sector does not provide employment, and why I'm saying this particular, this budget cater for forestry, mining, and agriculture, reduction of VAT, removal of VAT. Yes, I must say it, Mr. Speaker, because the Amerindian peoples, we are involved in mining, we are involved in forestry, we are involved in agriculture. And so, we will not only benefit from the cash grant and from others that is mentioned here, from the land titling, from education, but we will also benefit from employment from the private sector. And let me say, even some of us, Amerindians, are our own mining, we have our own operation, so we will benefit. So what is wrong with this budget? What is wrong with this budget? Thank you very much. I would like to say in response, the APNU failed, so they got F. And that is why they're sitting on that side of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, just before we take the suspension, I just want to make 2 observations. The first one with respect to points of elucidation, let us be careful and look at the standing orders. And the second issue is, the last speaker on open mic said, shut your mouth. I am asking the Hansard people to strike those words out of her speech. Thank you very much. At this point, let us take the suspension and return in 1 hour.
So they got the pick this and you only pick this.
Could we now have the Honorable Member, Dr. Karen Cummings?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker of this August Assembly, honorable members and observers, a very good afternoon to you all. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to join with my fellow colleagues in congratulating you to the office of Speaker of the National Assembly during this 12th Parliament, and I do wish you well in your tenure in office. Similar sentiments to the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Schuman, in this Amerindian Heritage Month. I rise today to register my dismay and disappointment at Budget 2020. While budgets are often filled with complicated constructs that give some difficulty to the average reader and follower, this budget made it easy for the masses to debunk the pseudo-economic theories put forward by the presenter of this budget, who strove very resolutely to follow the footsteps of the previous finance minister, Mr. Winston Jordan. But the honorable member fell short and was unable to skillfully or proficiently articulate and deliberate on matters of immediate interest to the beloved citizens of Guyana, let alone indicate to the Guyanese people the government's long-term vision for development for all the people of Guyana. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is full of numbers, but they do not align with the urgent needs of our people. There is hot air blowing everywhere, suggesting that the budget presenter is out of touch with the Guyanese. The budget is indeed defective, deceptive, and discriminatory. It has eroded the fresh approach to the good life in a green economy that the alternative government in waiting commenced in 2015. This budget is abominable because it leaks and shakes. It shakes out every concern for the well-being of the poor and leaks our funds for education, health, and housing. Mr. Speaker, this budget, when stripped of the verbiage, it shows that nothing new has been proffered. There are no transformational projects. Mr. Speaker, most of us are familiar with what occurred following the death of Lazarus, during Bible times. He was resurrected. So we know that story. Jairus' daughter, these were people who were sick or died and were resurrected, resuscitated, and so forth. But we are familiar with that. But certainly we are unfamiliar with the resurrection of projects like the Amila Falls and some of the non-profitable sugar estates. In addition, many of the projects announced by the budget presenter cannot be completed in the next 2.5 months left of this year, 2020, and therefore should not have been budgeted in the first place. In short, Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying, I'm indicating to you that the budget 2020 lacks vision, is devoid of interest, lacks clarity, and has no strategic approaches to guide and make this nation a prosperous one and Guyana great again. There is no clear roadmap to create jobs, to achieve macroeconomic stability, and to free up resources to alleviate poverty. Mr. Speaker, this doctored 2020 budget has shown that the financial dial has been returned to reckless spending with little or no accountability. Mr. Speaker, page 38, paragraph 4.60 notes, and I quote, the APNU-AFC coalition's government's neglect of some of the most basic public health programs. Really? Is that true? I must say thanks to Ms. Valda Ann Lawrence, the former Minister of Public Health, because the now Minister of Health, Dr. the Honorable Frank Anthony, has a good pitch and wicket to bat. Mr. Speaker, I know that there is still much work to be done in the public health sector, as is reflected in the malaria and tuberculosis and HIV programs, which are on target to reach their goals. On that note, Mr. Speaker, we wish to observe that Guyana is on the precipice of being declared filaria-free, and the last round is scheduled to begin in October through November 2020. Please, Honorable Member, do not take Guyana backward. So, a good wicket, yes, a good pitch, Mr. Speaker, as the Ministry of Health is the recipient of a new 10-year Health Vision 2020-2030 program to effectively address health inequalities and the social determinants of health, as well as the new strategy to address the HIV situation. Mr. Speaker, wouldn't find it. We would like to see the continued timely screening for cervical and colonic cancers and for other non-communicable diseases. With the successful passage of that important tobacco control bill during the APNU-AFC's coalition's tenure, we implore the Minister of Public Health to ensure the establishment of a tobacco council to help to enforce the relevant laws. Mr. Speaker, on our taking the reign of office in 2015, we inherited a suicide rate of 34.7 per 100,000. But by 2017, the rate was 24.63 per 100,000. By 2018, the rate fell even more, 18.88 per 100,000. Thus, the evidence shows that the APNU-AFC coalition government utilized the correct approach to lessen the suicide rate, and thus moving Guyana from being the country with the highest suicide rate per capita. Of course, if you go by Kwame in the street, you will see our newly mental health department. In the same breath, I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that valiant efforts must be made to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, the health and well-being of the Guyanese populace. The 3 main pillars for optimal health, namely universal access to public health coverage, universal primary health care, and preventative health, must be realized. I must hurry on to say, Mr. Speaker, that appropriate lifestyles must be encouraged to promote good health and prevent diseases. The reckless road and workplace accidents that have a huge social and economic impact and incur much cost to the Guyanese people must be discouraged. Mr. Speaker, the hard-working families in Guyana can ill afford a reduction in human productivity and financial insecurities, but certainly would want the good life as was championed by the former president of Guyana, retired Brigadier David Arthur Granger. Mr. Speaker, on page 57, paragraph 4.107, This government boasts of partnership with the Eye Care Guyana organization, which continues to provide much needed glasses to the Guyanese populace and account for an increase in the complement of about 13 new optometrists who entered the healthcare system within the last year. But Mr. Speaker, in this budget 2020, there is no increase of funding to the Eye Care Guyana project, which has been brought now under the Ministry of Public Health Program on Disabilities after the funding was exhausted in 2019. There is also a decrease in funding to both the National Commission on Disability and the Tolman Reed Rehabilitation Center. Mr. Speaker, page 77 of 85 at section 613 states, as I quote, "The government plans to remove the corporate tax on private health care as well as VAT on medical supplies." However, in the same vein, Mr. Speaker, I must say that valiant efforts must be made by the Ministry of Health to police the drug supply chain to ensure efficacy of the medical drugs and supplies, while simultaneously seeking to avert the presence of fake drugs from our market. Mr. Speaker, the health of this nation has been always at the forefront of the APNU-AFC coalition government. We were able to establish health units for men and the elderly. There was the completion of the Kingston bond, while the Diamond bond was upgraded. There was the construction of living quarters of health professionals in Cameroon, Letem. There was a completion of Port Kaituma Hospital, just to name a few. Mr. Speaker, as much as I have outlined some major developments during the APNU-AFC's coalition tenure in health, please permit me to turn my attention to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, in such an unprecedented time, health advocates and specialists have recognized that there is a conflict between utilitarianism and libertarianism, a struggle involving the imposition of mandated social distancing to protect public health while promoting impassionate efforts to diminish constraints in the interest of individual liberty and economic renewal. It's a time also when healthcare policymakers should focus on ethical issues such as health privacy. Mr. Speaker, on identifying the index case of suspicion for the COVID-19 in March of this year, 2020, the APNU-AFC organized, galvanized, and mobilized all sectors of the government to provide ministerial action plans, containment measures, micro and macro interventions and recommendations, along with exit strategies as to how to mitigate the effects and the impact of the coronavirus. There was mandatory virtual office functionality during the lockdown period. The National Task Force, the NCTF, quickly came into full gear by the former Prime Minister, Mr. Moses Versami Nagamutu. The weekly meetings were held to coordinate efficient and effective containment measures, identify gaps, and offer tangible solutions to the imminent crisis. The intense training provided jointly between the Pan American Health Organization and the Ministry of Public Health was very useful in building the capacity of health professionals and practitioners, and allowed for the efficient and effective management of the health sector in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, as Center for Disease Prevention and Control, the first of its kind in the Caribbean, was built in record time to allow for the quarantine and isolation of susceptible and vulnerable individuals at home and abroad who did not have access to such facilities in a private setting. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC coalition government managed the COVID crisis in a timely, methodical, strategic, and structured way. One would have thought, Mr. Speaker, good sense would prevail, and that the new government would have endorsed this initiative with open arms and build on the foundation that was already laid by the previous government. The former president, retired Brigadier David Granger, had recognized this dilemma and said, as I quote, "The transnational public health challenges have become frequent and fatal. And with the increase of globalization, there has been an increased incidence and virulence of communicable diseases," close quote. So we know if it's not Zika, it's chikungunya, it's some other thing. So infectious disease is a welcome idea. And we should really work together as a team, TEAM, together everyone achieves more, because we're all Guyanese and we can work together to make things happen. PUSH, to push until something happens. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 cases stand, as of yesterday, at a whopping 1,958, with 598 active cases, 74 new cases, 58 deaths, 1,302 recoveries. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health claims that he has a plan. Yet the APNU AFC government is saying that the Minister of Health is solely responsible for the steep rise in cases seen. An increase of 438% in cases, an increase of 280% of deaths, will reinforce the point that the buck stops clearly at the feet of the Honorable Minister. Guyana has a case fatality of 3%, which is almost similar to America, and you know the population compared with ours, just 750,000, and a positivity rate of 17%. By the way, the case fatality really tells of the degree of severity, whereas the positivity rate tells of the prevalence of the existing disease. And the positivity rate should really be about 5%, and ours is 17%. The Guyanese people would want to see the epidemiological curve flat and plateaued soonest, even in the light of the claim that more testing of symptomatic patients are being done. Mr. Speaker, there needs to be an aggressive campaign by the Ministry of Health to ensure that there is contact tracing in all 10 administrative regions for the coronavirus. There must be a more strategic and targeted approach to address this immediate concern of COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, with the constant rise in cases of COVID-19, the government may find it difficult to streamline public health, to downsize teenage pregnancy, and may even find it challenging to reduce mother-to-child transmission of HIV. Does the Mental Health Department have adequate finance? And is there a leap of faith shown so as to cope with the unintended pregnancies due to the lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic? Mr. Speaker, during this COVID-19 pandemic, there must be a coordinated response as health continues to be decentralized. There must be the stepping up of testing, tracking, and treatment of COVID-19 patients in the 10 administrative regions. And the regional bonds must be stocked up with the requisite resources and personal protective equipment, PPE and gear, and the standard test kits, of course, of PCR tests, you know, because that's the standard test WHO has signed on to, okay, and has approved. And we know that should be made available. Sensitivity and specificity of those tests are very high. Mr. Speaker, it is noted on page 40, paragraph 4.66, that a mere 17 million is placed in the budget 2020 to commence the construction of a cold storage bond in Region 6 to ensure that vaccines supplied to that area do not lose their potency. That's a mere 70 million. Mr. Speaker, there must be a paradigm shift in the way things are done in the country as it relates to the health of the nation, because the health of the nation is really the wealth of the nation. Public health care must be repurposed for COVID-19. Hence, the government must forge ahead with the Smart Hospital Initiative, which included the retrofitting of health structures to make them more resilient, linking structural and operational safety with green interventions. Mr. Speaker, advocates of the core programs of the Ministry of Health must spare no effort to have childhood vaccination programs and health services for cancer screening, family planning, and non-COVID infectious diseases altered, interrupted, or neglected. I quote from Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, WHO Director, as I quote, he says, as we preparing for vaccines for this deadly disease, immunization is one of the most powerful and fundamental disease prevention tools in the history of public health. And disruption to immunization programs from the COVID-19 pandemic threatens to unwind decades of progress against vaccine-preventable diseases like measles. We cannot afford any misstep to occur even as we wait the rollout of a possible vaccine, lest the people distrust us and reject acceptance of any vaccine program and potentially undercut all the excellent science and expense that preceded it. Close quotation. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, the Guyanese people look forward to a caring and compassionate government. The APNU-AFC coalition government recommend that there be health system strengthening to provide vital information, resources, empathy, and support to the most vulnerable population. We further recommend to the government the need to work on electronic streamlining and capturing and the managing of data on patients and contacts. Mr. Speaker, having said all of that, this budget fails to address the needs of the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, this budget needs to return to sender. This budget needs to be returned to sender. Mr. Speaker, it is well known that the budget is coming from an illegitimate government who stole the elections from the APNU-AFC and have nothing to offer of value and substance. We will have to press, Mr. Speaker, the delete button. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, Dr. Vindhya Prasad, the Honorable Minister of Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to add to your list of congratulations this afternoon, and also to congratulate the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Lennox Schumann, Honorable Member. I'd also like to extend good wishes and congratulations to all the members of Parliament who are here today to debate a budget that offers much to all of Guyana. When we are here in Parliament, it is serious business. When we are here in Parliament, our voices do not only reverberate in this chamber. Rather, it goes to everyone who is listening out there. They're listening. And when you trivialize major occurrences in their lives, when you dismiss the harrowing period of 5 months when people had to cope with the pandemic, its repercussions, to cope with the economic hardship because of mismanagement and incompetence, to say to people that you did it, you fixed it, and you addressed their concern is nothing short of ludicrous. I stayed away from saying reprehensible, felt that close. Mr. Speaker, the last honorable member said the budget is filled with numbers. I know that mathematics is not the strong point of those members. I know you don't like numbers, but a budget must have numbers. What else would it be if not filled with numbers? The point of it, Mr. Speaker, there are good numbers, and these numbers have been allocated to various critical and key areas of this country. I would like to, at this point, say thank you to the staff of all of the ministries that worked assiduously and dedicatedly, and especially to my colleague, Minister Bishop Edgehill, and all those who worked to give us a budget in record time. A budget is an important thing because it guides the trajectory of what we want to achieve. It details to all of the country what vision the government has. And I stand here and I say very, very humbly, but very sincerely, there is vision. People are impatient. People have high expectations of this government. In fact, I am impatient. I understand their impatience, because what they would like to see is a reversal of misfortune that dogged them for 5 long years, and to see the return to this country of all the prosperous opportunities that all of Guyanese enjoy. When we stand here as parliamentarians or we take our seats, it is a privilege. It is not an entitlement. And to stand and to deliver, one must be honest enough to tell the fact as it is, to offer the truth. This is important to every parliamentarian sitting here. And if we fail to honor the oath that we have taken in this early time in Parliament, then I shudder to think what the population can expect. Mr. Speaker, today we are right in the middle of the debate. And I think, like much of the country, there is an expectation out there that there must be maturity, there must be political will, and there must be a desire to support any initiative that will benefit people. And there are many initiatives in this budget of 2020. Why is it an emergency budget? Because you contributed to it being an emergency budget. It is simple. Mr. Speaker, I listened very intently to all of the presentations, and I was looking for constructive recommendations to any member of this side so that we can act on them and we can say, let's discuss it further. That is what a budget debate is about. Mr. Speaker, I want to say here too, I have an open door policy to all of Guyana, and my doors are open to any one of you. This is the Guyana that we should build, not being counterproductive and counter to development and initiatives that will benefit all of this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to say today to all those of you who are here, if we move away from what people of this country expect of us, then we would have failed them before we even started. To bring acrimony, rancor, divisiveness, and irresponsible statements to this hallowed house, this august assembly, does you a disservice. It does your constituency a disservice. The question you should be asking yourself, what can I bring to the table to move my constituency upwards, to elevate their lives? That is what I would have loved to hear today, and every day. I didn't hear it. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 is real, and much was said about how we deal with COVID-19. The point is, and not only to do with COVID-19, many things have been raised. What we should be doing, how it should be done, what we didn't do, we just got here. It's not even 100 days. You were there for 5 years. So all of these things you have clearly told us today what your inadequacies are. You have showed us where the gaps are. You have told us clearly that you failed the people of Ghana. Thank you. They don't need reminding. They live it every day, you know. You know what bothered me when I got to the ministry? Like many of my colleagues on this side of the house. We walked this country. We packed hampers. We shared hampers, thousands of them. And we understood that people in this country were suffering. People in this country did not have food. People of this country could not feed their children. And when I got into the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, it was emphasized to me more, because women come and all they're asking for is food for their children. And you know what they say? I don't usually beg, but I'm forced to beg now. And every time they say that, I say to myself, never again will we allow people to threaten the fabric of democracy, rig an elections or attempt to rig it, and to remove the dignity of our women folk and our families, where plainly, there has been an exposure of the poverty that people are experiencing. Mr. Speaker, for anyone to deny this reality, they are not being true to themselves. And when we're not true to ourselves, we've lost the essence of what we are here for. Service to humanity, that's a privilege. And this Ministry of Human Services is geared towards offering service to the most vulnerable in our country. The budget, as it stands now, allots various sums to major programs within the ministry, including child care, social service, which attracts the largest percentage of the budget, and also administrative costs. What did I go in there and what did I find? And every minister has stood up, and rightly so, to tell you what they inherited. It's important that people understand what we went in to meet and where we are starting from, and what we have to extrapolate ourselves from. Nothing but an abyss, a mess, whatever you want to call it. I have to take my hat off, though I'm not wearing one, but figuratively, to the staff of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, because they did much with very little. The child care program and many of the other programs were virtually starved of technical resources. People were brought into the ministry, yes, but at the lower levels. And the technical expertise that was desperately needed, child care psychologists, social workers with specialist degrees to deal with PTSD, and for my colleague on the other side, post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are things that are badly needed in this ministry. What is planned is reorganization and restructuring of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. And I'm not doing it on my own whims and fancy. Let me tell you here, honorable members, that studies were done in conjunction with the IDB, and those studies sat on a shelf. And do you know what those studies dealt with? Social protection and expenditure, social safety net reforms, poverty assessment, and also strengthening of institutions and organizations. nothing was acted upon. That's going to change. That's going to change. We will act on them. In fact, I've already met, and things will start happening. I met with the heads of my programs within the Ministry of Human Services, and they had a number of programs that were just waiting for approval to be brought to the people of this country to alleviate their suffering and hardship and to tackle critical, serious issues like domestic violence, gender-based violence. And I want to say that very soon, before the end of this quarter, a survivors advocacy program will be rolled out in regions across this country, where women will have the support that they need from the moment of reporting to the conclusion of their cases. People will be trained to offer that technical support. And this is dealing directly with a serious issue in our country that has escalated because of COVID-19. In addition to that, partnering with the United Nations and the European Union on the groundbreaking Spotlight Initiative will bring over $4.5 million to this country to tackle violence. Violence that affects women and girls. And imagine that was waiting and not dealt with because persons were too busy holding this country to ransom. This will be launched by next month. That is how urgent we need this in this country. So you talk about emergency, and I've just said two things. In addition to that, there will be $150 million dedicated to frontline workers. Within the ministry, $22 million are designated for essential workers to provide childcare services. And I feel this is necessary. We have a lot of our working force, women and men, primarily women, who have to leave their children unattended. And this will be offered to both public and private sector workers, children below the age of 7. And I'm hearing that this budget has nothing. Mr. Speaker, I go further to say that there are many other groundbreaking programs that target the most vulnerable, the disadvantaged, the underprivileged, people who are differently able. And you know, even though we say human services and social security, this ministry has become aligned with women. And would you believe that nothing was done at the Guyana Women's Leadership Institute? Nothing. This year, before the end of the last quarter, 2 programs will be rolled out that will benefit at least 200 women. And what are we doing for women? While we are dealing with their immediate needs of providing food for them and their children, feminine and dignity care packages, we are also ensuring that these women have an opportunity to be part of the working world and to be financially independent. This is looking at women holistically. This is taking people from off of the breadline. This is ensuring that if they need to get out of a potentially violent home, then they have the opportunity to do that. You know, Mr. Speaker, this is a house where heckling is allowed, but when serious issues like this that deal with the vulnerabilities, I am shocked that members will treat it in such a cavalier manner. Now, Mr. Speaker, members of this House, we need to ensure that these initiatives are supported. Why am I saying that? Because it's not going to only benefit this side of the House or that side of the House. These are going to benefit all of Guyana. What a difference from what was in the ministry when a program called SLED, and everybody knows about it, was moved from the Ministry of Local Government to the Ministry of Human Services. And with a signature, people got large sums of money without even having to apply. I leave it right there. I believe in systems-based governance, and the ministry will move in that direction. Not ministerial discretion and ad hocism. No. Systems where people can have equal access and opportunity. systems where the red tape that frustrates people will be removed. Systems where people have direct access to me by the provision of a virtual desk so they can interface with me and all the key staff members virtually, as well as come and let us know what is going on. I appeal to the members of the public to ensure that you work in tandem with the ministry and all the officers so that we know what's happening on the ground and we can deal with it if there are issues with alacrity and effectively. Mr. Speaker, our child care program continues to offer much needed services to the children of this country. And the head of that program, Ms. Green, has spent many of her years at the helm of that. And she has offered guidance to this area. And I was happy to go to the Children and Family Center and engage with the children. But more than that, there's building on all of this, expansion of our child advocacy centers. So there's a one-stop shop where children can have their needs dealt with in extremely difficult circumstances. This is because of partnership with NGOs that offer us the opportunity to spread our wings and to get into regions. Now, this ministry is extensive, and in addition to child care advocacy programs, we'll be looking at the month of children, where we will be doing a virtual children's rally so that we can continue to engage with our children even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Training did not happen in any major way in the last year. Why is that so? We have virtual platforms. Why wasn't this used? Those are things that will happen in this last quarter of the year. So there will be training of the staff, retraining if necessary. Scholarships, I'll be able to ask my colleague, Minister Sonia Prague, that scholarship be provided for people so we can fill all those technical vacancies that exist there, because it's needed. In addition to that, I want to say too, that there are institutions that have been badly neglected. I was appalled going to the night shelter and seeing the conditions that the indigent and homeless have to deal with. There will be new programs to refurnish, renovate, and also give that place a lift so that people, when they come there, will be treated like people. We don't remove the dignity of people because they can't afford or they're impoverished. I believe that dignity is something that should never be stripped from anyone. And as I stand here, I'm happy to say that there has been an expression of interest from a very, very exceptional service-oriented group to partner with this ministry, and together we will change the night shelter. It is looking at the indigent, the poor and the homeless, and giving them another chance at life, not just packing them up in shelters, training them, getting them back into the working world, looking at the differently abled. I met with the Deaf Association. They said no one bothered with them for a lot of years. I am bothering with them now. And these are the things that we need to accept that we did not do, you did not do. It's going to be done. So I say to you, instead of being disparaging in your remarks, instead of treating this budget as it has nothing to offer, walk with us and let us make people's lives better. I've always believed when people take the low road, take the higher road. And this is what I'm asking that we do. No one, no community should be oppressed and suppressed. And this is where this government will work tirelessly to ensure that all people have equal opportunity and access to everything within our power to provide. I haven't fired a soul. Come and check. Mr. Speaker, I believe in honesty, integrity, and transparency. And once people demonstrate those qualities and have excellent work ethic, why should I fire them? That's not a law. They should not have a problem with those things, and they must turn up to work. You can't want to be paid and not work.
You can't have 3 jobs.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard, you know why I'm going to raise this point? I've heard a lot about discrimination today. And I looked at the Deputy Speaker, and you know what? He is part of the opposition. He gets no support from the opposition. So sometimes charity needs to happen from within before you talk about discrimination. Mr. Speaker, it is necessary for us to demonstrate to this country that they matter, the people matter, all of the people in this country matter. The shenanigans that people had to endure in the last 5 months, they should never have to endure that in this country, in my beloved Guyana. Never. Never. The pain, the hurt, the hardship. You know where I see them? At the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. People have suffered psychologically. Mr. Speaker, this country has become fragmented because of what went on there. Instead of spewing spurious and irresponsible statements, be responsible parliamentarians. Be responsible and represent your constituency fairly and objectively. Mr. Speaker, I do not want to see the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security create a dependency syndrome where people are only waiting for handouts. All the good books advocate that we should teach, we should train, and we should empower people so that they can help themselves. It does not matter which book you read. Now, pension and the delivery of pension is important. We are in a peculiar situation where we are reminded to socially distance. We are reminded to take all the preventative measures. And we are going one step further. That would lead to many other phases. And we're delivering to 3,400 pensioners their pensions directly to their homes. Never been done. We are encouraging pensioners to utilize the bank. We are coming up with alternative venues so that pensioners don't have to trek far distances to get their pension. And in the hinterland, we will be partnering with the Ministry of Local Government to have mobile units take pensions closer to where people live. If this is not progress and if this is not vision, then tell me. Mr. Speaker, we're looking too at young people. Young people are pivotal. Talk is cheap and will always be cheap if not followed with targeted action. And the targeted action will be looking at those vulnerable young people, many of them who display disruptive behaviors. And we are going to be expanding our family enhancement programs in the various regions that is accessible to anyone who would like the service, where our trained counselors will work with disruptive youth and their family to ensure that they are engaged, they are reformed for the want of a better word, and they are able to make a positive contribution to country. Mr. Speaker, we also would like to equip them with basic skills so that they can find employment. And this will be the move forward dealing with young people through the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. Mr. Speaker, and I want to say, we're not providing for 2 people and 5 people. Hundreds of people across this country will benefit. Important legislation like the Sexual Offences Act and also other legislations that deal with domestic violence, our gender policy, these things have been ignored. Like many other things, they sat on a shelf. And as soon as I got in there, these were brought to my attention. We will be working to have those in this House so that we can have comprehensive review of existing legislation and also new legislation to target peculiar issues that fall within the ambit and the purview of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. Mr. Speaker, to really understand what people need, there will be a comprehensive review, which is called a Poverty Assessment Map. A database system will be launched by this ministry to capture those who will be beneficiaries of what we can give to them in their time of need. In addition, legal aid falls under this ministry, and I know the Attorney General has spoken to me a lot on this. We will be partnering on this initiative to expand it, to improve it, and to ensure that people have access to legal services. Mr. Speaker, as you can see, the ministry is very expansive and deals with many, many, many serious issues, deals with vulnerable populations, and deals with critical issues that speak to the welfare and well-being of the people of Guyana. I have no doubt, if together we confront the good, the bad, the unacceptable, and we work, no, call me, I'm not talking about the ugly to the good. The good, the bad, the unacceptable, then we can offer fairly to this country what it is the people really want. Mr. Speaker, I urge the members of the opposition to stop saying you and we and them and us. No. This Guyana, we like to say one people. Let's be one people. We like to say one nation. Let's be one nation. You are here because you have said you want to help people. Well, then help them. The avenues are open to you from all of the members of this house. Every one of them. So do not go out and be irresponsible and tell people that this offer was not given to you. It was, and it will be repeated. You will be reminded. You know, I will respond to that. Talk and action, we have hit the ground running. And in a little, about a month, the number of things that we've managed to achieve, please, I don't want to make a comparison. I think the people will do it for me. Mr. Speaker, I haven't even mentioned the removal of that. You know, it's interesting. We say that nothing is there for the budget. Well, then, you know what? Refuse. Refuse the $25,000 when it's offered. Refuse the VAT and pay the VAT on your bills. Refuse it then. Why would you want to penalize the elderly? Why? When they can benefit now from free water. Mr. Speaker, if my good friends and colleagues on the other side continue to be defensive of perfidies and everything that they have had people endure in this country, you cannot blame people if they never trust you. Mr. Speaker, trust is a very important thing. Respect is not an important component. You can't just buy those off the shelf. They have to be earned. And I don't know what you've earned in that level. Mr. Speaker, this movement forward from 2020 to 2021, from this budget to a new budget, should be seen as a journey of healing, a journey that we take together. Stop dividing people. I'm a frank person, and I call a spade a spade. Stop dividing people. Our country's psyche has been damaged. The coffers have been next to empty, and in a limited fiscal space, a budget like this is being presented. I spoke extensively about how the vulnerable population and the poor can benefit. And I hear the cry, why the private sector? Because they will provide jobs. Come on. That's obvious, but sometimes you have to state the obvious. So, Mr. Speaker, when we speak in this House, be careful what you tell people. The mother who can't feed her child knows what she feels. The father who is off of a job and on the breadline knows what it's like not to take home money for his family. Mr. Speaker, I visited those families and it broke my heart. And like you too, I will call for justice, because no young person should lose their life in such a gruesome way. I was not afraid to go because I understood the angst and the anguish of those parents and grandparents. It's not easy to lose your children. And to lose them in that way, no one should have to bear that. So to say that justice is something that will be denied, I think we need to let that proceed to the point where justice is served.
Honourable Member,
Speaker?
we will need to proceed for an extension.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be happy to proceed for that extension.
Someone will have to move it for you.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given another 5 minutes to be able to continue his presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've said much, and much more can be said about the budget and how it will benefit women, men, children, and even those from the migrant population. In fact, migrant assistance of 3,800,000 will benefit 300 migrant families in collaboration with UNICEF. Mr. Speaker, what I want to give a commitment to this House and to the people of the country on is that every effort will be made to assuage any suffering, to alleviate any hardship, to address the concerns of their welfare, because I believe that I've been fortunate, blessed, privileged to be placed here. So now I can be an ear, a voice, and a support to the voiceless and the underprivileged. And at least I am not unafraid to say, whether I say it here or on television, my message is the same, Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, it is interesting to listen to what transpired, but I want to tell this country, this nation, and all the members that a new wave of transparency, accountability, progress, care, concern, prosperity is about to hit the country of Guyana. Don't be left behind. Get on the wagon. Join the procession. Join this movement as we take Guyana forward with our plan for prosperity. I commend this budget to you, members of this honorable House, and I say to you, each time we meet here, let us endeavor to be part of a solution and not make a problem magnified because of our inability to be productive, but rather our predilection to be counter. Mr. Speaker, if we have proclivities and fetishes, let them be positive ones, members of the opposition, so that they can engender positivity, they can engender hope, and they can move the people from the state of despair and hopelessness and from the demoralized state that they were in towards understanding that now things are going to change. The country will be transformed, and the PPP civic government is here. We are a team, and we will work for all the people of Guyana. I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Member, Ms. Natasha Singh Lewis.
Salam. I bring the salutation of peace to you, Mr. Speaker, and the Honourable House. Mr. Speaker, I would first like to congratulate you as my brother in Dean and the Speaker of this noble House. You may be aware this is my first time serving as a Member of Parliament, and my expectations of the Speaker resides in your acceptance speech. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, I stand here as a humble and grateful Muslim woman representing the APNU AFC in this Parliament. Might I say, the first hijabi in this honorable House, a demonstration of our Guyanese diversity. Mr. Speaker, take a look around on this side of the House. You will notice that our women represent 42% of our contingent, and for this I congratulate and thank former President, Brigadier Retired David Arthur Granger for his commitment to acknowledging and demonstrating gender equality. Mr. Speaker, I rise to add my voice to the denouncement of this budget, which I believe is best described as disappointing. The budget presented, in my opinion, is a reflection of a late-for-school approach disguised under the term emergency. Contrary to what this government would have us believe, this budget is not a good thing because it lacks vision even in the short term. It is deceptive and discriminatory in form. I suspect that its presenter must have been attempting to make up in form what this budget lacked in substance. And this may explain the extensive length of time spent on its presentation, and in his attempt to discredit the transparency and accountability of the previous administration. We didn't expect better. Mr. Speaker, I made a bold statement, which is the budget is discriminatory in form. Permit me to explain. It is stated that the budget is pro-poor and people-centered. In other words, it is PPPC. In reality, it is only for one set of people. It is not a lie. Check the evidence by the sum allocated for Gaisuku alone. Oh man, what happened to public servants, eh? Honorable Speaker, I wish to advise the Honorable Minister of Labour that it is not too late to stand up for your brothers and sisters in the public service. We will help you to make representation for them. How dare this government claim that this budget is inclusive when it lacks vision and is devoid of clarity? You cannot advocate a macro-financial policy as people-centered when the budget intentionally disregards or omits any programmatic action which specifically addresses a progressive process for us to enhance social interaction, integration, and harmony within and across social groups in Guyana, which will result in reinforcing stronger families and communities and improve our national values in order to sustain socio-economic and cultural well-being and enrich livelihoods for all of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, this government is not serious about the people of Guyana and their well-being. They have paraded on the West Bobbies talking about peace and harmony and unity, and I've heard it mentioned in this honorable House, when in fact they have not only completely dismantled the Department of Social Cohesion, but as if to emphasize their utter disdain for the very concept of national unity, they have fired the entire staff of that department. Mr. Speaker, I would know, because I am one who suffered this at the hands of this government. This isn't me telling you a Nancy story, Mr. Speaker. A whole department was fired. Ask the Honorable Charles Ramson. This kind of behavior, in my opinion, is reckless. Shame on you, PPP. Are we to believe that this government has replaced social cohesion with social division? Mr. Speaker, permit me to inform the National Assembly that fluff is not going to cut pass. We will call the government out on all these fluff. The government is not only reckless and deceptive, they are also uncaring. And of this we ought to be ashamed. This budget ought to have had a structured program that is offered to the people of Guyana, where we can work towards a unified Guyana, addressing our diversities, ensure that they are embraced, and we are able to resolve our conflicts, where we are able to network with stakeholders and empower them, where we are able to promote equity and decision-making processes, which would benefit all of us, not one set of people. May I please, Mr. Speaker, enlighten the government ministers who went to West Coast Berbice not so long ago and offered lip services to peace and unity that, in the words of my teacher, Paulette Henry, from the University of Guyana, and a Barbician by right, she said, Natasha, peace is not one-sided. It requires evidence of action to promote equality and respect. So I hold the Honorable Vindhya Prasad on the issue of peace, respect, equality for all Guyanese. But there is nothing, Mr. Speaker, there is absolutely nothing in this budget that you can go and point to with this objective being a vision for Guyana. Mr. Speaker, let me share evidence of what vision of real leadership is all about. Under the David Granger administration, we saw in May 2015 the formation of a Department of Social Cohesion with a mandate to promote peace and harmony. April 27, we saw the development of a strategic plan in collaboration with the UNDP. Honorable Vindhya Prasad, you've asked for us to reach out. And I'm saying to you, the evidence is there. We have a strategic plan. It's 2017-2021. We were halfway of implementation. We've started the monitoring evaluation. And of course, the government threw it out. But we need a structured approach for building harmony and unity in this country. It doesn't have to go out. We can work on it. This is something that we can do together.
Coming through the door, Vindhya. Coming through the door that you open.
This was done so as to demonstrate a structured approach to building the moral fabric of our society and to demonstrate to the world that social cohesion is not a farce, as someone once indicated in this honorable house previously. The department trained over 500 persons at the local level. That is the NDC municipality and regional administration. They are groups to embrace and appreciate their diversity in our multicultural society. We partnered with major stakeholders in the harmony process, and very strangely, we partnered with the ERC to offer the said training. And good people like Niaz Suban and Pandit Diodat welcomed this training and declared it a really great initiative. Mr. Speaker, we cannot in good faith sit here and accept less. Fluff and gaff with comrades is not going to cut it if this government is serious about unity and peace for Guyana. The entire country is bleeding, and we need affirmative action and evidence of action, not just fluff, gaff, photo ops, and press conferences. That is not going to cut it. Mr. Speaker, the David Granger-led administration was deliberate at building our national identity and repairing the moral fabric of our society. We gave the people hope when we ensured that the programs targeting women's development, especially our female single parents, were implemented in all 10 administrative regions. Many of our women were trained in local government. A program dispensed by Women's Leadership Institute located at Cove and John. So maybe the Honorable Windia need to go back and check with her staff, because training in local government was done at the Leadership Institute located at Cove and John. You will not be allowed to come to this house and speak untruth to the people. We will set the record straight, and that's what I'm attempting to do tonight. Mr. Speaker, the Sustainable Livelihood Entrepreneurial Development Program provided opportunities for young entrepreneurs to start their own businesses all across this country. For the first time, young people could become self-sufficient instead of looking for a paltry handout from the government every month. Through the SLED program, over 3,000 persons benefited across the 10 regions. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Public Works claimed in his budget presentation that over the last 5 years, human services were badly managed and poorly executed. Mr. Speaker, my religion teaches me to speak the truth always. If only he can claim that this sector was mismanaged, then anyone who makes that claim, they are a stranger to the truth. The programs and projects speak for themselves. Mr. Speaker, let me have the Honorable Member understand what people-centered development plans produced under our government. A brand new modern child care and family center erected in 2016 in Sophia for our less fortunate children and supporting families. And I have gotten feedback when the Honorable Minister visited. She was quite surprised to see how modern that facility is. That's a good thing, and you're taking over a good thing from us. We hope that you will maintain it at its current standard. The implementation of transparent, structured program for people with difficult circumstances, which benefited from all 10 regions of this country. 160 persons were trained to implement programs for the Sexual Offenses and Domestic Policy Unit. Because of the tremendous and dedicated work and the great stewardship of the former Minister Amna Ali, Guyana has been selected as one of 6 beneficiaries in the Caribbean for the Spotlight Initiative. And Honorable Hindi, a total of 4.5 million euros is expected to fund this program. And I'm very glad that you said you are going to continue with it. Homes were activated to take care of vulnerable women who were traumatized by domestic violence. Mr. Speaker, on the area of juvenile delinquency, we strengthened the Family Matters program, which is presently operating in 5 communities in regions 4 and 6. This program provides specialized counseling services to the families of youth 10 to 17 years of age. These are the youths most vulnerable to crime and violence. Mr. Speaker, the David Gurge-led administration gave the people of Guyana hope when we ensured that the programs targeted women's development, especially our female single parents, were implemented in all the regions. Mr. Speaker, how can they say this is a people-centered budget? Let me address the elderly, sir. When we took office in 2015, pensions stood at $7,500. We, the APNU AFC coalition, brought it to $20,500. This new government now brings it to $25,000. And they're not even going to get it until 2021. What a shame when you promise the people $40,000. You are going to give them a meager $4,500. PPP, that's a broken promise, and what a shame.
Because it's not a budget.
Honorable member, it would be a shame if we don't give you an additional 5 minutes to conclude. And someone so moved?
I like this speaker.
Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, honourable member. Honourable member, you can continue to your conclusion.
We would not want it to be a shame. This government, Mr. Speaker, is demonstrating how visionless and uncaring they are, even as we know and they acknowledge that senior citizens are more at risk during this COVID-19 pandemic. Why are we allowing this government to be so disrespectful to our senior citizens? The Honorable Vinya would not address those kinds of issues because it's not in the budget. Couldn't they have made this increase retroactive? It would have been a nice little bonus for these senior citizens during this troubled time. But, Mr. Speaker, they don't have that kind of vision, and hence I say that they are visionless. I'm asking, couldn't they have done that retroactively? That's just a meager sum compared to what they're going to give everybody at Gaisuku. Couldn't they have just had a little bit care in their heart for the senior citizens of Guyana? I'm asking, Mr. Speaker, for the thousands of pensioners. Mr. Speaker, the Guyanese people should be concerned about how this government is treating not only the senior citizens, but all of us. It's just NACA, no raise for public servants, nothing for senior citizens. Police only getting half of what they promised. Mr. Speaker, this is troubling. Mr. Speaker, this government was in opposition for 5 years, and I expected them to have had a well-thought-out plan. But what we have witnessed here is a disconnect from the Green State Development Strategy and a great void filled with old cars and used tires. Need I remind this Honorable House of the time when blown-out substandard tires was among the leading cause of fatal vehicular accidents? One does not need formal schooling to realize that older vehicles are not just an additional strain on the environment, they are also a great danger to limb and life. Well, the chassis might bring a faster turnover to auto dealers, as proclaimed in Guyana Times, but it also brings death to hapless motorists and passengers. Mr. Speaker, not all development can be measured by profits and gains. Mr. Speaker, our country grieves as we recognize that this plan for prosperity sets us back 5 years in the past instead of moving forward. Mr. Speaker, I rise to tell you and this honorable House that I cannot sincerely agree with this budget, even in the short term, even as it says emergency. I cannot agree with this. This is a sad time for the people of Ghana, but I would like the people of Ghana to know that there is a silver lining. Let not your heart be troubled. The coalition will be back. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much, and I wish to extend happy belated birthday to the Honorable Deputy Speaker of this House.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, Dr. Jennifer Westford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, please accept my congratulations to you on your assumption of your esteemed position that you hold as Speaker of this National Assembly. Also, I would like to congratulate Deputy Speaker, Honorable Member, Mr. Sheikh. Let me also welcome and congratulate all of the new parliamentarians who have entered this August House. I hope you realize you have accepted a Herculean task, and I hope that you are prepared to do what it takes to represent the persons who expect guidance from you. Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues in adding my contribution to this PPPC 2020 budget entitled Our Plan for Prosperity. And yes, Mr. Speaker, there is a silver lining, a lining of prosperity. Mr. Speaker, and this prosperity is not only for one category or one facet of our community. It is for all of us. And I say us because even we who are in this house will benefit from that prosperity. All of our people, our families, our friends, all Guyanese will benefit from it. Mr. Speaker, before I continue, let me extend congratulations to the Honorable Member Juan Edgel for his eloquent and commanding presentation of his first national budget. Congratulations, Mr. Speaker, are also extended to the technical staff of the Ministry of Finance, as well as the other line agencies, without whom the speedy compilation of this budget would not have been realized. Mr. Speaker, over the last 2 days, we have heard umpteen descriptions and classifications of this budget, mostly by members of the opposition. Some said it is not people-friendly. Some said it was designed for the private sector, while others sees it will increase the riches of some and pauperize the majority. Mr. Speaker, just a few minutes ago, we heard the honorable member who just spoke said it has nothing for the public servants. And just this morning, sir, none less a person than the honorable minister of the public service also voiced those very concerns. It makes me wonder, sir, are the public servants a new class of aliens that have arrived in this country? The public servants are Guyanese like every other single Guyanese who will benefit from this budget. And they will also be benefiting, sir. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of the Public Service, as well as the Honorable Minister Juan Edgel, outlined in detail all of the benefits that will be accorded to every single Guyanese, including the public servants. They are members of this country. They are members of our society, our communities. They are not a separate kettle of fish. They are Guyanese like every other single person, and they will benefit equally. They will benefit from the tax reliefs. They will benefit from training, from scholarships like every other Guyanese in this country. Why do we single them out? Why are we singling them out? Mr. Speaker, all of these ill-informed statements, Mr. Speaker, and I said ill-informed, especially by the opposition, can only be described as the rantings of persons who are either severely mentally challenged or blinded by their zealous political fanaticism. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that, as the saying goes, a tiger never changes its stripes. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, the very honorable members who sit here and criticize this budget and speak about democracy. We heard the honorable member Dawn Hastings was very brought up when she was speaking about democracy. Mr. Speaker, these are the very people who, by their selfish, uncaring actions, denied the citizens of this country for 5 long months the right to choose who they wanted to govern them. Yes, Mr. Speaker, our citizens were denied the right to have a government of their own choice to protect their livelihood in a timely, methodical manner. That, Mr. Speaker, was democracy under attack. 5 long months, Mr. Speaker, of stress, anguish, and frustration. No wonder, sir, that during this protracted waiting game, the incidents of spousal and child abuses spiraled upwards, as the honorable member, Ms. Vidya Prasad, will tell you. Mr. Speaker, this 2020 budget is a people's budget. It caters for every sector, every facet of society, every man, woman, and child, irrespective of their ethnicity, religion, age, or political affiliation. I wish to inform the honorable member holder, Mr. Speaker, that this budget is designed to benefit and shall benefit all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, I totally agree with the honorable member, Mr. Sears, when he also said that the people of this country does not and will not countenance squandermania. Truthfully said, Mr. Honorable Member. We now know, Mr. Speaker, that karma is alive and well, as it is because of the very wanton acts of squandermania that he and his colleagues have been relegated to the opposite side of this house. Mr. Speaker, the veteran trade unionist, the Honorable Member Coretta MacDonald,
vehemently stated that this budget is not a working class budget and that one needed to have a philosophical view of it. Kudos to you, honorable member. You can have all the views you need. But let me reiterate that this budget is one that will benefit everyone, whether they be working or non-working class citizens. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member spoke at length about monitoring the 50,000 jobs that will be created. Jobs, Mr. Speaker, that will benefit all of the people. The bauxite workers. She spoke about occupational health and safety, the RDC workers and the state boards. But Mr. Speaker, it is unbelievable but true that throughout the entire honorable member's speech, there was not one mention of the word teachers. One would ask why this was so, especially since the honorable member I'm trying not to answer you, honorable. Especially since the honorable member holds the mantle of being the General Secretary of the Teachers Union. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, after a protracted struggle between the teachers and the then APNU administration for improved benefits, the Guyana Teachers Union made a right about turn and left the teachers out in the proverbial cold. Mr. Speaker, the betrayal of Jesus by Judas for a mere 30 pieces of silver is well documented. But one would never have envisaged that our teachers would have been made to suffer a mirrored betrayal by none other than the esteemed Guyana Teachers Union General Secretary. Mr. Speaker, it is well documented, honorable member, that the former PPP administrations have always, and I repeat, always, and the honorable member who is not in the house, I am noticing, Ms. MacDonald, can vouch for that. And it's there for all to see in her speeches that she would have made to the teachers when she said there were better conditions of service that were offered by the People's Progressive Party Civic than that was ever offered by the APNU AFC government. It came from her very lips on several occasions, honorable member. Mr. Speaker, it is documented that all of the PPPC administrations have always negotiate acceptable benefit packages for teachers. And we promise that we will continue that trend, with or without the meaningful participation of the Guyana Teachers Union. No, Mr. Speaker, no longer must our teachers or our primary educators be deemed greedy or selfish during their quest for improved conditions of service. Never again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our health workers at all the levels must be commended for their dedication. I take this opportunity to thank them for their service to country. We, in this honorable house, as well as the nation at large, owe them a debt of gratitude. for they have worked and have continuously done so, tirelessly and beyond the call of duty throughout this COVID epidemic. Mr. Speaker, our discipline services must also be commended for their steadfast role in enforcing the COVID-19 regulations, and not, as one of the honorable members mentioned, sent only with pellets to threaten the society. Mr. Speaker, the important and increasing demands on these workers dictate that if they are to function effectively, they must be appropriately equipped to perform their roles. With this in mind, Mr. Speaker, adequate resources have been allocated within this budget to the relevant sectors. And I urge my dear friends who, on the opposite side of this house, who came pre-programmed not to accept the budget, but for your own benefit and the benefit of your communities at large, have a look at it, just read it, and not be blinded, as I said before, by that zealous political agenda. Mr. Speaker, while the honorable members on the opposite side are dabbling in semantics about what classifications to attach to this budget, our citizens are becoming increasingly infected with the COVID-19 virus. And some of them are even dying at alarming rates. And
Honorable
Mr. Speaker,
member, we will have to dabble in a bit more time for you then.
Mr. Speaker, I'd crave your indulgence for 5 minutes more for my colleague to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable member, please continue.
and Mr. Speaker, the honorable member on the opposite side, when he spoke, he said that during the APNU AFC's reign, the COVID virus was not running, and it's now starting to run. Honorable member, please be informed that it could not seem to be running because nobody was being tested. The more you test, the more you will find if it's there. Those who have eyes to see, let them look and you shall find it. And that's what we're doing. That is what we're doing. Honorable member, hadn't you been tested? You're lucky we're here that you got tested. Where ignorance is bliss, it's folly to be wise. Mr. Speaker, our citizens lack opportunities for employment or are losing their jobs because of this very virus. Food prices have spiraled beyond the reach of many of these persons, and they cannot afford to service their bills. It is therefore imperative, Mr. Speaker, that the relief measures enshrined in this budget is implemented with alacrity. Mr. Speaker, one must look at current circumstances. One must look at projections and trends for the future, and one must look at how decisions of the past will impact on the decisions for the future. Mr. Speaker, the People Progressive Party civics governments have always had outstanding success with our programs and policies designed to protect the disadvantaged and the most vulnerable in our society. By improving monitoring and evaluation methods, we will ensure that these programs will remain effective and relevant. We will review our social sector programs in consultation with civil society to ensure that they are channeled to those who need them the most, and not, that has happened in the previous administration,
distributed to friends and families. This government, Mr. Speaker, believes that in order to pull ourselves out of the difficulties which the previous administration has put this country through, corruption and rampant squandermania, the collective efforts of all our citizens is required. Mr. Speaker, we are facing dubious times as a nation. This is not the time, Mr. Speaker, for grandstanding and stand-up comedy shows, the likes of which we saw during the presentation by the Honorable Member Duncan. This is the time for serious business. This is the time for nation rebuilding. Mr. Speaker, we all pride ourselves Mr. Speaker, we all pride ourselves at being intelligent. That's fine, sir. But a wise man once said that intelligence leads to argument, while wisdom leads to settlement. Let us all, therefore, in this honorable house, aspire to attain more wisdom than intelligence. Let us demonstrate to our citizenry that we in this honorable house are capable of positively leading, not misleading and inciting them along the wrong path. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Ms. Cathy Hughes, mentioned about social cohesion, and her words were that based on the events of the last few weeks, it is clear to everyone that the PPP is not interested in moving forward. Mr. Speaker, what is this? No one from the PPP was seen at Borby's instigating or inciting racial violence or strife. We were promoting peace, harmony, and we were calling for justice for the victims. Mr. Speaker, why do we want to place our muds on the faces of other persons? Mr. Speaker, social cohesion had been the mantra of the APNU AFC government. Mr. Speaker, let us in this honorable house, let us behave as leaders. Let us teach our people the right meaning of social cohesion, and let us encourage them to practice it. Mr. Speaker, on March the 2nd, 2020, the people of Guyana rejected the APNU-styled politics of deception, betrayal, greed, and arrogance. Worse and more so, mismanagement. They rejected, Mr. Speaker, officially sanctioned corruption. They rejected squandermania. They rejected discrimination. He needs it. A lot of it. They rejected immortality. They rejected inequality. They rejected nepotism and cronyism. The people, Mr. Speaker, thus voted emphatically and unequivocally for equity and prosperity for all. They asked for, Mr. Speaker, and they deserve progress, harmony, and social peace. The people, by their own will, Mr. Speaker, chose the PPPC as their preferred government to lead them into a prosperous, happy future. Mr. Speaker, all of our citizens must be assured that this PPPC government, their government, is committed to dedicating all of its energies towards protecting them, strengthening their democracy and the rule of law, incentivizing growth and job creation, enhancing their welfare, creating a society that is bereft of racial discord, and to mold a country where everyone sees themselves as one people, one nation, all working together to realize one destiny. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, commend this budget as one that will obviously change all of our lives for the better. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now call on the Honorable Member, Mr. Vakash Ramkisoon, for his maiden presentation. Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency President Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, the General Secretary of our party, and our Vice President, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, for giving me this opportunity to become a member of this National Assembly to serve in the capacity as Parliamentary Secretary attached to the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member in the opposition this morning tried to define democracy for us. The Honorable Member ought to know that democracy does not mean hiding your SOPs. Mr. Speaker, in Region 3, the region where I came from, we had 355 SOPs for regional elections and 355 SOPs for general elections. Ask my colleagues who are sitting in this National Assembly if they had not seen the 355 SOPs for regional and 355 SOPs for general. Mr. Speaker, democracy is not falsely accusing the citizens who voted as being dead and migrated. Democracy is not denying the will of the people as expressed by their votes on elections day. Mr. Speaker, the opposition on a daily basis kept randomly and arbitrarily accusing voters of being dead and migrated. I was on the team in Region 3. The Honorable Deodat Indar, the Honorable Dr. Tandika Smith, Honorable Priya, we all worked on the ground. And we found many of those same persons who we were told they hadn't voted or either migrated. We found them in the communities. Is that what democracy is about? Mr. Speaker, this atrocity Mr. Speaker, first of all, in parliamentary democracies around the world, it is the first time perhaps we would know of a budget that is being debated, but the parliamentary opposition spent more than half of that budget already. It is perhaps the first time in the history of parliamentary democracy that such a situation we are confronted with. Is that how democracy is defined? Mr. Speaker, it would be improper on my part if I don't speak on the recent past. approximately 1905 days, the people of Guyana endured extreme hardship of the APNU-AFC. The APNU-AFC campaign promises were never delivered. It was flushed instead. Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC's 100 days plan is yet to commence. They had 1905 days roughly, and yet it did not start. Mr. Speaker, where was the good life in the green economy that was promised? One of our honorable members said that perhaps it means to paint government buildings in green, so we are having a green economy. Mr. Speaker, the hardships where the quality of life were severely compromised for all Guyanese. Squandering of state assets and resources. Let us never forget the introduction of over 200 new taxes and fees. Mr. Speaker, firing in targeted communities and lack of employment opportunities. And what was the solution given to us? Plantain chips, cook-up rice, guava cheese, fish and chips. That was the APNU-AFC's answers to Guyana's future. Mr. Speaker, when the PPPC government left office, it left agricultural sector with clear indications of great expansion and diversification. There were several systems in place for farmers and agro-processors to expand their operations. Mr. Speaker, after 2015, after the elections of 2015, when the APNU-AFC government took offices, they implemented a number of harsh measures that discouraged persons from investing in this sector. These measures also saw many persons over the years who would have invested millions of dollars to scale down their operations due to increased land rental fees and D&I charges, as well as imposed taxes on key agricultural machine. When the PPPC was in office prior to 2015, in addition to crops such as rice and sugar, which have been traditionally produced, greater attention and emphasis would have been placed on the cultivation of crops such as oil palm, coconuts, green vegetables, ground provisions, fruits and flowers. Today, non-traditional crops are playing an even greater role in Guyana's economy, ranking as one of Guyana's highest agricultural export earners. This emergency budget, Mr. Speaker, will begin to address some of the weak areas of these sectors developed over the past 5 years. Mr. Speaker, although a significant amount of these products would be utilized locally, the greater proportion would be destined for the tourist heavens of the Caribbean and the niche markets of North America and Europe. This expansion and diversification of the agricultural sector, whereas in the manufacturing sector, have been greatly assisted by tax incentives provided by the government, by the market intelligence made available to the producers, and by the central authorities and by the expansion of information technology base in the country. By help provided by the government in some cases in the actual marketing of the products, and by the research and extension services of the National Agricultural Research Institute. Prior to 2015 general and regional elections, Mr. Speaker, the livestock population of the country would have been significantly increased and its quality much enhanced. As a consequence, not only would Guyana be self-sufficient in meat and milk, but a considerable amount of our beef production would have been exported. This, Mr. Speaker, would have come about because of improvements in the quantity and quality of feed supplies through the local production of energy-based protein feeds, through the extension of the areas available for pasturage, mainly by improving the productivity of the saline soils to the north and the acid soils in the interior, through genetic improvement of the livestock and through greater attention to animal health. Mr. Speaker, perhaps of the greatest significance, however, would have been the boost which the sector would have received through the opening up of new areas for agriculture. This, Mr. Speaker, would have been made possible by the improvement and expansion of our country's infrastructure, the provision of adequate social services in these new areas, and the preparation of land use plans and programs with specific objectives of diversifying the agricultural base and increasing production. Mr. Speaker, given the current state of sugar in Guyana, it would be remiss of me not to reflect on the efforts of the PPPC government prior to 2015 to maintain the sector before the previous administration closed 4 estates. Mr. Speaker, the now opposition promised to keep the sugar estates open. However, they lied and lied and lied and deceived the people.
Honorable Member of Parliamentary Language, I'll have to strike the lie and lie and lie.
Untruths, misleading information. By 2010, Mr. Speaker, sugar would have become more competitive because of one, higher field productivity based on improved farm practices and improved genetic varieties, the utilization of additional areas of land mainly in the Skeldon and Albion, Rose Hall areas, enhance sugar recovery through the replacement of existing obsolete mills by larger state-of-the-art factories, which in addition to giving higher yields, exhibit significant scale economies. Special benefits would have been obtained through the construction of a 350-deck factory at Skeldon, the rationalization of the industry through the merging of some of the estates and some operations, the utilization of diffusion technology at 2 sites, and the co-generation of power from both the Guyana Power and Light Company and Guy Suku's own Bagas. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that the industry has been facing financial challenges as the demand for sugar globally has shifted. Persons have become more health conscious. The demand for table sugar has decreased, and this has ultimately influenced sugar's cost of production. Instead of exploring ways to diversify the industry, the previous administration chose to close estates, ultimately putting thousands of persons on the breadline. A government that promised all Guyanese, quote unquote, good life. Mr. Speaker, sugar must not be measured in financial terms only, but also in terms of economic and social implications. Sugar sustains drainage and irrigation systems in the various coastal areas. Sugar was the integrating force within the sugar estates and adjacent communities. If you destroy sugar, you will destroy perhaps those communities in itself. Mr. Speaker, strategic industries like sugar and bauxite cannot be measured in terms of cost-benefit analysis alone, but on other factors like social are equally important. Just think for a moment, the loss of contributions to the National Insurance Scheme. Under the watch of the People's Progressive Party Civic, the rice industry too flourished. There were clear indications of increased productivity through better farming practices and the use of improved varieties, increased mill recovery, and through the modernization and rationalization of most of the mills, and by achieving greater efficiency in the use of water. In addition, because of the assistance which would have been provided by government in obtaining of market intelligence, there would have been more diversified international market for Guyana's rice, although the major importers would remain the European. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Member, your maiden speech. Honorable Member, your maiden speech could be longer if someone would move an extension for you to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given another 5 minutes to conclude his maiden presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member, you may continue.
Mr. Speaker, for agriculture in Guyana to reach its full potential, it must be strategically repositioned and must rest on the twin pillars of global competitiveness of agricultural products and balanced development of rural areas and communities. This budget acts as a stepping stone for those aspirations. Mr. Speaker, we have to work to correct the outdated and inefficient agriculture, health, and food safety systems. Extensive work to correct the inefficient land and water distribution and management systems and a weak and non-integrated information and intelligence system. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to zoom into Region 3. One of our farmers' main concerns is the access dams. Over the past 5 years, these dams were basically ignored, and it cost farmers additional monies to have their produce being transported to the markets. Added to this, there were no machines allocated to areas such as Philadelphia, Vorgenugen, Barnwell, Podrine, Nimes, and so on. This was due to the neglect by the former administration. Result, our farmers suffered. Mr. Speaker, also in region number 3, we found out that 4 bulldozers is down and only 1 operating at this moment. We will now have to work to expend monies to bring these machineries up to scratch. Mr. Speaker, some of the major farm to market access roads, such as Bridden Hoop, the Lajalasi, roads in Legwan, Wakanam, and clay brick, all weather road, were poorly maintained, and farmers were left to do self-help to fix these. Mr. Speaker, if I'm permitted to turn to canal number 1 and 2, those canals are in a very poor state. They cannot provide the necessary drainage services to the farmers. We visited these areas recently and found that they were poorly maintained, even though millions of dollars were awarded to a contractor for cleaning them. The contract was taken away from the residents and direct beneficiaries and awarded to one no knowledge of those canals. We will fix this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work to maintain all the drainage and irrigation canals in Region 3 and other regions across Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa, will surely provide details of this in his deliberation to this Honorable House. We will ensure all drainage cocas are fixed so that farmers can feel safe and their hard works and crops will not go down the drain when it rains. This is our commitment to our people, and we will stand by it. Mr. Speaker, in closing, please allow me a moment to touch on COVID-19. This pandemic has a negative impact on agriculture around the world, and it's no different here in Guyana. We already have programs in place through the Ministry of Health to ensure that our nation is kept safe during this time. However, at the level of the Ministry of Agriculture, we will pay special focus to our farmers to ensure that they follow all guidelines as they produce to feed our nation. Our teams from agencies such as NAREI, GLDA, GRDB, NDIA are geared to ensure that whenever they are in the fields, they also provide guidance and awareness to farmers to ensure they are safe. Mr. Speaker, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we are doing and will be doing. We wish to assure this nation that at no point we will ignore our farmers. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and all the honorable members of this House for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, this concludes our business for today. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of the Assembly to 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 17th September, 2020.
Honorable members, the Assembly now stands adjourned to 10 a.m. Thursday, September the 17th. Thank you. Good night.